One fine day when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I went to my grandparents' house. My grandma was like, "Hey, Lorelai, do you want to watch a movie together?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to." So she put The Secret of NIMH into the DVD player and we started watching it together. I did not finish this movie because I got too scared and we had to stop watching it. And then I never tried to watch it again until recently, whenever I found it was on Tubi. And just a side note, not relating to this at all, but in one of my earlier videos, I said some show was on Tubi, and I didn't know anybody who had Tubi. Well, I'm using the streaming service now, and I'm glad I am because it has Secret of NIMH on it. If none of you know what this movie is about, please go watch it before watching this video. I'm going to spoil the entire movie, and this movie is amazing. So right at the start of this movie, we get a monologue from this guy named Nicodemus, and he's talking about how this man called Jonathan Brisby has just died. We then jump to see Mrs. Brisby, who is going to visit this guy called Mr. Ages, asking him for some medicine since her child, named Timmy, I think, is very sick. She gets the medicine, she starts to go home, and she finds a bird tangled up in some string, and she tries to help him. Then the farmer's cat, whose name is Dragon, starts to chase after them. Now, Mrs. Brisby is a mouse. I don't know how I failed to mention that before, but she is. She manages to escape Dragon, but she ends up losing the medicine, but thankfully the bird that she saved ended up getting it. She gets home and gives Timmy the medicine, but not before a shrew, who they just call Auntie Shrew. She has 2 other kids, and they refer to her as their aunt. She's like, "Mrs. Brisby, moving days tomorrow because the farmer is going to plow the field." And Mrs. Brisby's like, "No, Timmy can't get out in the cold weather. He has pneumonia. He might die." And the shrew's like, "Too bad. Figure it out, Brisby." And then she just leaves. The next day, the plow comes, but Mrs. Brisby and the shrew are able to stop it by cutting the fuel line. However, that's only going to stop the problem temporarily, so Mrs. Brisby decides to go to the Great Owl, and he's going to provide some excellent advice of how to keep her children safe, or at least Timmy safe, without having to actually take him out of the house. The bird guy takes her there, and whenever she meets the Great Owl, he says, "Meet the rats. The rats will know what to do." So she goes, and as it turns out, Mr. Ages is there. And he's like, "Oh, well, I'll take you to Nicodemus. He's the leader of the rats." And on the way, they meet Justin, who is the love interest for this movie. But he's not a rat. I think he's a weasel or something. That's what he looks like anyway. As they're going to find Nicodemus, they see this meeting going on, and it's basically about the rats are like, "No, we need to leave our home. This place isn't safe for us anymore." And then this one guy, who reminds me of Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, is like, "No, we stay here. This is our home. We have everything we need. We even have electricity. We've been stealing it from the humans. We don't need to go." Though they're interrupted by Justin, Mr. Ages, and Mrs. Brisby. They're all surprised that Jonathan's wife is there. Mrs. Brisby is of course confused because she doesn't know how all these people know who her husband is, but Nicodemus actually ends up explaining it to her. And this is the part that terrified me as a child. Nicodemus explains that the rats and the mice here were experimented on, and the effects of the experiments made them able to read, and they're smarter now, and that's how they escaped from NIMH. And Jonathan was part of the reason how they were able to escape. I'll actually just play the clip right here to better illustrate how this scared me as a kid, especially with the music. The music did not help.
20 rats and 11 mice were given injections. Our world began changing.
But Jonathan got killed while trying to enact their plan to leave. He had to drug the cat Dragon so that Dragon wouldn't have a chance to be able to catch them, and he ended up getting killed by the cat. Which is just kind of a sad way to go out. In the backstory, Nicodemus explains that most of the mice died because they got swept away in the vents or something, and Jonathan and Mr. Ages were the only ones to survive. And then Jonathan gets killed by the cat! Well, Mrs. Brisby volunteers to try to drug Dragon, and she succeeds, but it takes her much longer than anticipated, and the rats are already trying to move her house. Yes, they are moving her house so Timmy doesn't have to go outside in the cold. But Gaston sabotages the entire thing in order to kill Nicodemus so they don't have to move. So now Gaston is taking over, and he's like, oh, poor Nicodemus, this is so sad. And Mrs. Brisby comes up to him trying to explain that they have to go because Nim is coming. She overheard the farmer on the phone while she was in the house talking to Nim because they somehow found out that the rats are at the farm. Gaston won't listen, Justin and Gaston get in a fight, and Gaston ends up dying. Also, his name is not actually Gaston, I just got so used to calling him Gaston that I forgot his real name. But then, whenever it looks like everything is gonna be okay, Mrs. Brisby's house starts to sink under the mud and her children are inside! Though earlier Nicodemus had given Mrs. Brisby this amulet and it activates, and it saves her children. It might sound slightly confusing, and I'm still thinking about it because some things in this movie aren't really explained, and that's one of them. I don't really understand how the amulet works. But the day is saved, the rats move, Mrs. Brisby's house is okay, along with her children, and they all live happily ever after. Including the bird from before, he was looking for love for the entire movie, and he found it right at the end. This movie was amazing, and I really love the 2D animation. The characters are just so expressive, and then the environments around them are just beautiful. I wish movies would look like this again. And not to mention the musical score, it really adds to the movie. Which, it should do. There are definitely things about this movie that don't really make sense or are just confusing, but it's still such a good movie, though it is rated G, which I don't know how it's rated G. I mean, the part where Gaston and Justin is fighting could be pretty scary for younger kids. Like, I know if I saw that scene and it didn't stop with the part where Nicodemus was explaining what happened at NIMH, I would definitely be terrified. Also, the part where Mrs. Brisby's kids are literally drowning in mud, they're crying and screaming for their lives. It's pretty intense for a kids movie, which I'm not trying to make it sound like that's a bad thing. I really like this movie, even if it scared me a lot as a kid. It definitely has to be one of my favorite movies of all time. For the longest time, Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events held that spot as my favorite movie, but this one might just take that spot. I also love the story of how this movie was made. I'm not going to get into it in the video because it's getting long enough, but I encourage you to go check it out. That's all I have to say for this video though. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe and I will see you next week. Goodbye!